vehicle.
Record this. I'm at my house, bro.
Get out of the vehicle.
Record this. Record this. No, bro, I'm not. Record this.
Sir, why does he need to step out of the vehicle?
I'm at my house.
Because he's not cooperating with me. He keeps trying to get out of the vehicle.
No, I'm not.
No, he's not. He's sitting here next to me.
I'm sitting here right now.
But
record this.
Sir,
I've asked you to step out of the vehicle.
I'm at my house. I'm at my house, sir. I'm trying to get into my house. I'm trying to get into my house.
I don't care. Get out of the vehicle.
Bro,
Right?
which charge are you pressing me against? What charge?
You're being detained right now. Get out of the
What
vehicle.
Sir,
charge?
why is he being
What
detained?
charge? What charge?
You got a brake light out. You're not being
That's not a
cooperative.
charge.
We
I'm at my
are being
house.
cooperative. We
matter.
are
You're
being
just- I'm at
my house,
Sir,
bro.
Get out of the vehicle.
No.
Sir, we
You have
are
no
being
right.
cooperative.
You need a
Sir,
search warrant.
we are
You're
being.
harassing me. I'm suing you.
Sir,
Go ahead.
Sir, we are being cooperative.
Bro, look at this shit. You
Sir,
see this?
We're being cooperative.
You see this shit?
Sir,
Get out of the car.
you said our brake lights out and we're gonna.
We're at the house
I
now.
asked
We're
him to
not
step out of the
driving.
vehicle.
Okay,
We're
Ellie,
not
just step
driving.
out. You
Get out of
don't,
the car.
Ellie, just step out of the
Bro,
car for a
I'm not
second.
doing it in no handcuffs, bro.
Get out of the car.
Okay,
right now.
Ellie,
Bro,
just step
get
out.
off me.
Ellie,
Get your
have a
hands
choice.
off me. Get your hands off me.
I'm not taking my hands
Bro,
off.
get your
out of the
hands.
car.
I'm not
Why-
going nowhere
I
until
don't-
your hands.
Get out of the car.
But I'm
What are
gonna
you-
sue you, bro.
Go
You're
ahead,
on.
do it.
Bro,
Why
you're on my property, bro. This is mine, bro.
I don't care.
This
Get
is
out of
my
the car.
property. No, bro.
Get out of the
Ellie,
car.
Ellie, Ellie,
No,
Ellie,
I'm not going
Ellie,
nowhere, bro.
Ellie,
I'm
let's
not
just
going
Ellie
nowhere,
step
bro.
out of the car. Ellie,
Let go of the steering wheel.
Bro, I'm going out the car. I'm going to my house.
Ellie,
Get
just.
in the car.
Move.
Oh my God. Ellie, Ellie, Ellie.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live, back again with another episode of The Forecast. So, in New York, a mentally ill brother, Donald Ivy, was walking down the street minding his own business when Albany Police decided to stop and harass him, which led to him being tasered to death. So let's see what reason the police had to murder this unarmed brother.
Our other big story tonight, a family and community looking for answers tonight after a man dealing with mental illness dies after being tased by Albany Police.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Cries of frustration on the streets of Albany. These men and women are angry that it's now been 1 month since the death of Donald Ivy and still no answers.
They have a very hard line that they will not release any more information until the DA's investigation is complete. And I'm sure that even when it is complete, we will not get sort of the answers and the justice that we're seeking.
Ivy died shortly after a run-in with police last month. Police say he was walking in the area of Larkin 2nd when they approached him for acting suspiciously, then tased him. The 3 officers involved were placed on leave but have not been charged in Ivy's death.
39-year-old Donald Dante Ivy got into some sort of altercation with police when he went out for a long walk not long after midnight. It happened this morning in the area of Larkin 2nd Streets. His sister tells us Ivy was taking a variety of medications for mental health issues and would often walk at that time of night to clear his head. Police say he was acting suspiciously and quickly became combative. He was tased but still managed to run. He was eventually cuffed, and then police saw he was having trouble breathing. Ivy's family says this didn't have to happen.
And I think it's the approach, the way they approach them. If they had come up and said, hey, buddy, what's up? You know, what are you doing out here this late? You know, and maybe would have came into a conversation other than a death.
What I will tell you is that it's going to be a complete investigation, and we're going to be, as transparent as we can. We're going to make sure that everybody will eventually know all the facts.
It just seems so senseless to me, like this could have been avoided. So I just have all types of emotions about it right now.
It's not just Baltimore, it's not just Ferguson, it's not just Oakland or Los Angeles, it's also Albany. Right? Albany has an issue with police violence and police brutality, right?
Late this evening, police released the names of the 3 officers involved. We have them for you right here. They are officers Joshua Sears, Michael Mahany, and Charles Skinkle. They are all now on paid administrative leave. The family has expressed some concerns about the amount of time that lapsed before help arrived for Don Ivy. We want to give you the timeline provided by the police department. At 12:36 a.m., officers had their contact with Mr. Ivy. At 12:47, 11 minutes later, officers start requesting Albany Fire Department Medical Services emergency help. At 12:50, 3 minutes after that emergency medical services, they arrive at the scene. Then at 1:10, 20 minutes after that, Mohawk Ambulance arrives at Albany Medical Center with Donald Ivy. All of that will be looked at as police continue their investigation. Family and friends say they are planning a rally in front of police headquarters tomorrow night.
So this brother Donald Ivy was walking down the street minding his own business. He was unarmed. He didn't commit a crime. But Albany Police said they saw him walking and he looked suspicious because he had a coat on and he had his hands in his pocket. So officers Joshua Sears, Michael Mahany, and Charles Skinkle, who were all a part of an anti-gang force, but this brother wasn't in a gang, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. But they said they had reasonable suspicion that crime activity was afoot. So because the brother Donald Ivy chose to walk down the street with a coat on and put his hands in his pocket, that's all the Albany police needed to violate his Fourth Amendment rights and search him, which goes along with those stop and frisk policies that Giuliani talks about in New York. And it's not just New York. You'll be stopped and frisked in America anytime a cop feels like it, no matter where you are. It's just New York had no problem putting it on the books. But as these three cops violate this brother's Fourth Amendment rights, they claim this brother was aggressive and they had an altercation and then he took off running. And then the police said, well, we tasered him 5 times and it didn't work. And then we tasered him 2 more times and then it did work. And I guess it did work if your goal was to kill him. But they said they tasered him 5 times and he continued to struggle. But at no point in the video do you see him struggling. You see him running and then you see him on the ground. And then after they taser him 2 more times, the police claim that's when he suffered a medical emergency and lost consciousness. It wasn't while they were tasering him and doing whatever else. He didn't have a medical emergency until after all of this happened. And the police are saying that to say, well, it wasn't anything that they did that made him die. He had a medical emergency because of something else, not because of what we did. But since they don't have a body camera, we don't know what else they could have did. And the police weren't going to release the video at all until his family saw the video and started making claims about what happened to him. Then they decided to release the video to try to prove his family members wrong.
New video out tonight that shows some of what happened between Albany Police and Dante Ivy the night he died last April.
That's the night he was tasered while being arrested, and the video comes out 2 days after a grand jury refused to indict the police officers involved.
We have team coverage tonight. You can see Tori Wells has the video that was viewed today with Albany Police.
And Jennifer Lukey is outside a rally where people are demanding justice as they see it in the Dante Ivy case. We're going to start, though, with you, Tori, if we can. What does the video show and why the release now?
First, I want to just show you the crowd that is gathered here in front of the police department. They're chanting, "Let us in." And as you mentioned, Den, Lukey's going to have their message in just a minute. About that video, though, in it, you do see police officers and Donald Ivy running through the street at one point. You see officers performing CPR at another point. Other than that, though, it's difficult to know exactly what's going on because some of that video is dark, it's grainy, or it's blocked by another police car. Albany police say this video shows the night Donald Ivy was stopped, then tasered by police. Chief Brendan Cox says he decided to release this video after hearing this from Ivy's family in an interview yesterday.
I saw the police taking their batons, beating him like this, beating him on his leg. The part that got me more than anything is when I saw an officer spit on him in the video.
Certainly our hearts still go out to the Ivy family, and we know they're still grieving, and we know they've been through a lot of trauma, but there's some things that were said that aren't accurate.
Police showed us 3 angles. This one from a nearby building shoots down the street. In the distance, you can see a police car. The chief says this is when officers first stop Ivy because they think he could be carrying a gun. He says the conversation begins fine, but then turns when officers try to pat Ivy down. They try to taser him, and he runs. You can see that from this angle, too. The chief admits both of these videos are dark, grainy, and far away. This is the last video police showed us from a police dash cam. We're going to freeze it as this officer pulls up.
At this point, they're struggling to get him into custody.
This shot is partially blocked by another car. Police tell us what we can't see is Ivy on the ground with an officer or 2 holding his feet. Right here, where you can see some more movement, police say officers realize Ivy is in distress. We're slowing this part down to show you this.
The one officer's head kind of popping up and down. They are starting CPR.
Paramedics arrived shortly after.
This is a night nobody wanted to happen. As officers didn't want that to happen. We didn't want that to happen. But nobody was beating Mr. Ivy down with batons, and nobody spit on Mr. Ivy.
Police tell us this is the only video they have from that evening. They tell us body cameras, of course, would have been helpful here, and that is the plan for this department in the coming months and coming years. Now, there have been quite a few questions about the taser in this incident. The chief told us that the taser was used 5 times but didn't work, used with the prongs and the wires. He says officers then used the taser in a stun drive mode twice, and that did work.
Now, the police will release these videos if they think it will help them. And in a lot of these cases, when they say they don't have body camera footage, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't have video. But the Albany Police Chief Brendan Cox decided to release this footage, now realizing that it contradicted their original story about how he became aggressive and they had a physical altercation. When you can see, he just took off running. He didn't try to fight anybody. He was trying to run away. So they tased him 7 times. And within 12 minutes, they went from stopping his brother Donald Ivy for no particular reason other than he looked suspicious to calling for medical help after you killed this brother. Now, these 3 cops were given a paid vacation, and eventually a grand jury cleared these cops of all charges, saying these cops followed proper procedure and protocol.
And that grand jury has cleared each of the 3 police officers of any wrongdoing in the death of Dante Ivy.
During a dramatic press conference this afternoon, Albany County D.A. David Soares said he followed through on a promise to Ivy's family, to the police, and to the public.
That promise to conduct a full, fair, independent, and impartial investigation.
And he said his office checked every shred of evidence available: police video, interviews, taser analysis, medical evidence, and more.
However, he also said not all the police car cameras were working properly that night, and the absence of that video affected the investigation.
We have team coverage of the grand jury decision. Tori Wells with the DA's announcement, Craig Smith with reaction from Albany's police chief, and with our newest reporter, Hubert Wiggins, on the reaction from Ivy's family.
Tori, we start things out with you outside the courthouse.
Well, the district attorney says that he released the grand jury decision along with this information that his office gathered today because he wanted to be transparent to the community. But he says this discussion is not over because there are changes in Albany that need to be made. Now, the grand jury was tasked with considering the cause of Ivy's death. To bring a homicide charge, they would have had to determine that the officer's actions contributed to the cause of death and that they should have expected their actions would have caused his death. That was not the case here. District Attorney David Soares says the medical examiner doesn't believe that the tasing caused Ivy's death. Soares says he told Ivy's family that decision today, and he was open about how difficult that was.
I've never experienced interaction with a family who has consistently demonstrated grace and patience as the Ivy family.
Moving forward, the district attorney says Albany has work to do when it comes to training officers to better identify people who have a mental illness. When it comes to the use of cameras, he says more of that would have helped with this investigation. And he says Albany needs to work on community and police relations.
At the end of the day, we're left with asking the question, why can't young men of color walk through the streets at certain times of night without police interaction? The question is a simple one to ask. The answers are, however, much more complicated. Because in a city where you have 4 shootings in one weekend, you also have to consider what it is that we're placing upon our men and women who wear the uniform.
And the district attorney says those difficult questions will take time to answer, but he is committed to that, and he will be following up with other city and community leaders on that.
So I guess proper protocol is stopping somebody for no reason, just because they look suspicious, and even though you're unarmed, still violate your 4th Amendment rights and still commit illegal searches on you. And the D.A. David Soares said, we feel bad that we have to profile and violate your rights and that people have to die. But you know, black on black crime, so we have to racially profile you. And if we got to kill a few people, then oh well, that's what we have to do. This brother was walking down the street minding his own business and was tasered to death. all within 12 minutes. And then they justified it by saying, well, it wasn't the cops' actions that caused his death, even though he died of cardiac arrest. And it's our fault that they have to profile us and violate our constitutional rights. And it's definitely our fault if they're forced to kill one of us. And of course, these stop and frisk policies aren't about race because they don't see color, even though 80% of the people arrested in Albany for weed were black. Not that black people do more drugs than white people. The drug epidemic is happening in the white community. What they're really trying to say is, well, black people are just inherently more violent. They can't see race and they're so colorblind, but then they'll turn around and justify profiling you by race. But as long as we let them investigate themselves and cry and beg and pray that they hold themselves accountable and give us justice by punishing themselves, at some point, we're going to have to stop the insanity and doing the same things over and over and over and put aside our tribalisms and start doing what we have to do to make sure that we can protect ourselves. At the end of the day, we all we got.
The jury's decision to not indict Officer Pantaleo sparking protests across the country, including right here in Albany, with the protest taking place early this evening at the Public Safety Building in Albany. And News 10 ABC's Amy Keller is there. She joins us now live with more. Amy.
Elisa, that protest is actually still going strong. They've moved from the Public Safety Building here, the intersection of Henry Johnson and Livingston. There's more than 100 protesters out here. Maybe a dozen or so of them are actually sitting on the ground in a circle in the road here. Police are having to direct traffic off of 90 onto Livingston, away from Henry Johnson. At this point, it has remained peaceful. Protesters I spoke with say they had to take a stand because they don't believe justice is being served. Strong accusations, yes, but protesters say they're true, that they're sick and tired of police using excessive force and getting away with it. The latest incident occurred Wednesday. That's when a grand jury decided not to file charges against a New York City cop. That officer is accused of causing the death of an unarmed black man, Eric Gardner.
2 non-indictments have occurred and nobody has said anything. So I decided that it was time that we speak out.
Something needs to be fixed because something is obviously wrong.
Students at St. Rose joined together across Madison Avenue, blocking the road to traffic. In a separate event, dozens gathered at the Public Safety Building in Albany, all with the same message: Black Lives Matter. Albany Police Chief Stephen Krokoff says he can understand where the anger is coming from.
A lot of what you hear is born out of a long history of law enforcement being used to oppress people. I mean, that's irrefutable.
I spoke with Krokoff at a state conference this afternoon. Law enforcement from across New York came together to discuss proactive ways they can stop gun violence. Since becoming police chief, Krokoff has placed an emphasis on community policing and says he takes reports about officers using excessive force seriously.
Anytime we get an allegation of excessive use of force, not only is it investigated through my Office of Professional Standards, it's then reviewed through the monitors, through the independent CPRB, and through the Center for Law and Justice of the Albany Law School.
Again, more than 100 protesters out here at the intersection of Henry Johnson and Livingston to protest that grand jury's decision. It remains peaceful right now.
For Complex News, I'm Natasha Martinez. BuzzFeed News published a damaging report for the NYPD early Monday morning. An anonymous source gave the outlet hundreds of internal files from the NYPD that showed officers committing fireable offenses like lying and brutally beating people, but still have kept their jobs. At least 319 officers from 2011 to 2015 have committed crimes that include lying, cheating, stealing, or assaulting New York City residents. The article breaks it down, showing that at least 50 employees lied on record or under an oath of some kind. 38 were found guilty of using excessive force, 57 have been driving under the influence, and several were accused of inappropriate behavior relating to sexual harassment, including one officer who touched and kissed a student while on duty at a school. The offenses are shocking, but what the NYPD chose to do issue with these officers is even more alarming. BuzzFeed writes that instead of those cops getting fired, the commissioner gave them dismissal probation, which means practically nothing, as officers continue to perform their jobs with the same salary. According to the report, which is the first of an ongoing investigation by BuzzFeed, many of the 319 officers still work for the NYPD today. The investigation outs the secrecy surrounding the internal misconduct of NYPD officers due to a law that shields those records from becoming public. The law also prevents citizens from being able to look up officers involved in their arrests to see if they have a history of lying or other abuses of power. BuzzFeed's report comes hot on the heels of another police misconduct scandal surrounding the Baltimore Police Department, which is being investigated for planting drugs and weapons, robbing citizens, and other crimes. And to put things into perspective, the NYPD scandal spans over half a decade.
Caught on camera, there is shock and anger about this police body cam video. A cop using a taser and pepper spray on a man who was having a medical emergency while driving his car. That officer already resigned, and ABC's Alex Perez is here with more on the outrage and the fallout. Good morning, Alex.
Hey, Paula, as you said, one officer has already resigned, and this morning authorities are now investigating whether 2 other officers acted inappropriately. It all started as a call for a hit-and-run accident, but things quickly got ugly.
This morning, tense moments caught on tape. Police body cam video shows officers in Fredericksburg, Virginia, drawing their guns.
Let me see your other hand right now!
And yelling at a man who's sitting in the driver's seat and appears to be unresponsive.
Put your hands up, both of them, now!
Police called to the scene after Washington allegedly drove his silver Hyundai the wrong way down the street, hit another car, kept moving, and then struck a median. Officer Sean Jurgens then tases Washington, even though he does not appear to be moving. But the taser fails. Jurgens then pepper sprays him. Turns out the man, 34-year-old David Washington, was having some sort of medical emergency.
Get out the car, I'm gonna smoke you. Get out the car, right now.
Finally threatening Washington and demanding he get out of the car.
That's the point, get out. Don't move around.
The officers then drag him out of the car. Washington can be heard moaning. An ambulance eventually arrives and takes Washington to the hospital.
The officers on duty didn't assess the situation correctly, and they had the time to do so.
Officer Jurgens has now resigned, and in a statement, Fredericksburg Police saying the use of force demonstrated in the incident involving Mr. Washington was not in compliance with department policy or training.
Now, we did reach out to Washington to see how he was doing, but our calls were not returned. Authorities did not reveal exactly what kind of medical problem he was having, but he could still face criminal charges. Officer Jurgens, in a letter to a local newspaper, says he believes, given the situation, he did what he had to do. Paula, Dan?
Tough to watch that footage, though. Really tough.
And still a few unanswered questions here, so we're hoping we're going to learn more as things develop. But yeah, tough to see that video and to see all of that happen, those tense moments in those few seconds.
And if they didn't have the body cam video in that jurisdiction, we wouldn't even know it existed.
Exactly right. One of the reasons why so many people are pushing for those.
Exactly.
An Evansville firefighter tells 14 News tonight all he wanted was to be treated like a human being during a police incident.
The off-duty firefighter who had been riding his bicycle claims he was cuffed, thrown to the ground, and threatened with a taser after a police officer thought he had given him the middle finger. Brian Bosen here with the fallout, which includes a police investigation.
David and Jackie, firefighter George Madison Jr. says he doesn't want any publicity. He just doesn't want this to happen to somebody else. We caught up with George tonight, who declined to be interviewed, but George tells us he's shaken by the incident and believes this may have been personal. This is the picture gone viral. Evansville firefighter George Madison Jr. kneeling on the ground near the corner of Riverside and Weinbach in handcuffs. He tells 14 News he was threatened with a taser and scared by the officer's actions.
He called me yesterday afternoon, right after the incident happened, said he was on his bicycle, went through a stop sign, saw a police car, and said that he waved at the officers, but he thinks the officers thought he was flipping them off.
Police Chief Billy Bolin, who is friends with Madison, says the incident is now under investigation.
I know him, I like him, I know the officers involved, I like the officers involved, so my job's to try to figure out the truth no matter who you like.
In a Facebook post, the youth pastor and member of the department's Combat Challenge team says he doesn't think race had anything to do with what happened. He tells 14 News the stop seemed to be more of a personal issue than a professional one.
Just because somebody says something, we can't automatically assume it's the truth. Not saying I'm doubting anything George has said, but we got to hear both sides and get to the bottom of it.
Madison says he's not out to create a media storm and wants the investigation to run its course. He tells 14 News there are great guys on our police department. The officer involved may be one of them, but yesterday he wasn't showing he was. And the EPD released a statement on this today, reading the investigation began this morning in order to preserve the integrity of the investigation and to ensure fairness for all of the involved parties. The EPD will not comment on the incident at this time. Boland tells us he hasn't spoken with the officers involved and they're not being named yet pending the outcome of the investigation. He says they will be interviewed once Madison files a formal complaint. That could happen next week.
An internal investigation clears an Evansville police officer of any wrongdoing in a traffic stop involving an off-duty Evansville firefighter. And tonight, that firefighter takes to Facebook with a strong response. Brandon Bartlett in our Interactive Center with the latest. Brandon?
Yeah, Jackie, that firefighter firing back late tonight right here on his Facebook page with some very strong words. Now, it's the same Facebook page that he used to share his story that went viral. Tonight, George Madison, the firefighter who was stopped by police last week, says he trusted the system and had faith in the leadership of law enforcement, but goes on to say they threw me under the bus and have shown their true colors. Madison writes that an internal investigation released tonight may have shown that no standard operating procedure was violated by the officer, but he writes his dignity as a human being was. Tonight, Evansville Police cleared Officer Jason Clegg of any wrongdoing when he pulled over Madison for not stopping at a stop sign on his bicycle and for making what officers thought was an aggressive hand movement. Madison has said he was only waving at the officers. Madison made a formal complaint with Evansville Police saying Officer Clegg was angry and aggressive, even unprofessional during that traffic stop. Madison gained a lot of public support after posting a picture and his story on Facebook.
With social media being as big as it is, our officers have to realize that that is our new reality. Things that wouldn't have gone public until maybe after an investigation and someone was not happy with our findings, that stuff will be out there now for public opinion to come in before we're even given an opportunity to address it.
And tonight, the police department says Madison's complaint was based upon his opinion of the officer's communication skills and not the officer's actions. Madison told me tonight he's praying about how to take the next step.
Did he leave again? How much? He was standing right in that corner. Who? Oh, no, it's that guy right there.
That guy?
Yep.
Okay.
He's not allowed. He has no trespass. He's not supposed to be at all.
Okay.
He's very violent towards us.
Okay.
Colorado 087.
Why are you still here? Why are you still here?
No, he's back. He's back. Get it back. Where's that guy?
You were told to leave, weren't you?
With me?
Yeah.
No, nobody see him. I left him by myself.
You left by yourself. Okay, then why?
Because my bag was here. That's why I came back up here. That's why.
Okay, what's your name?
So what?
I said, what's your name?
At 23.
You have your ID on you?
No, I ain't got no idea.
Okay, what's your name then?
So what's my name?
Yeah, what's your name?
My name, bro. I'm coming to get the bag when I'm leaving. That's why I came back.
Well,
up. My name?
hang on.
Why do you know my name, bro?
Because
I don't care about none of that shit, bro.
I don't care whether you care.
I don't care, bro.
How do you spell your first name?
How
do you spell your first name? I'm not playing you. What's your first name?
Bro, I told you, bro.
First name. Last name then?
That's my name. That's my last name.
Right? Oh, then what's your first name?
You know the first name.
No, what is your first name?
All right, bro. Sorry, what she say, bro? She told me to leave. She didn't never tell me to leave, bro. I came and I got up, but she the one gave me the bag, bro. I left this bag and I just came back up to get the bag.
She told me that you're banned from here and that you're having trouble with you earlier.
No, I haven't.
And so you're here
I
again.
just got here earlier.
She told me that you left earlier.
All right, duh, I left earlier, bro, and I came back to get this bag, bro. What are you not getting?
What's your first name?
For what?
What aren't you getting? I'm asking you your name.
All right, for what, bro? You understand that shit because he came. Before he came, he said, what are you here for? I told you I'm coming to get the bag. The way you keep making backup and all the other little weird shit. Bro, y'all weird as hell, bro.
Dude, we can call that on you 2 times, okay? First time you
right, because I can't even get the bag. What did you not get?
Get your name and we're out of here.
All right, so yeah, that's my name.
C-L-I-N.
You probably already know that. You know that. Y'all trying to be on some weird shit, dog. I'm not gonna keep playing with y'all. I'm not gonna keep playing with y'all.
What's your middle name?
What?
You have a middle name?
No. Clinton.
I've never met you before.
What? You haven't met me before. I don't know you, bro.
Right, so I'm saying I don't know all this.
No, you don't.
Okay. What's your address?
I don't got no address.
You live wherever?
Streets. That's where I'm at.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's my address. I don't got no warrants, but I don't care about you calling that shit. Call it. On that gay shit.
1662 radio.
2340.
Radio.
1662.
Forwarded Leonard with a file check.
Go ahead.
Clinton, C-L-I-N-T-O-N. So why have they been having trouble with you?
They've been having. I haven't been up here, bro.
She told me that you were violent with them.
If I was violent with her, why the fuck?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
All right, I just told your dumb ass, right? Dumbass question.
Why would she tell me that you're violent?
I don't care, bro. Stop talking to me, bro. I'm done talking, bro.
Why would she tell me you're violent with them?
Don't care. Don't care.
What's your issue tonight, man?
What's your issue tonight? Nigga, because you ask me dumbass questions. You only acting tough because he right here, but before he came, you wasn't saying all this shit, bro. You're playing that role. You gotta have backup just to have balls.
Oh, so I'm scared of you.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, okay.
That's what it is.
1644.
Must be shit. Must be.
I can.
What you pointing for? What you doing that shit for, man?
I was just talking to him. I can promise you I'm not scared of you though, Clinton,
all right.
Okay?
Alright.
So
1662.
Go ahead.
Right has a current BCR. Doesn't seem to apply to your location. Otherwise, no lead.
Yeah. Alright, put your hands on top of your head, okay? I said put your hands on top of your head for me, okay?
For what?
You're under arrest right now. You're not supposed to be here.
For what?
You're not supposed to be here right now. Put your hands on top of your head.
Don't do none of this shit. I swear to God, I'm gonna beat your ass, bro. Quit playing with me, bro. Quit playing with me. Fuck it, you wanna, bro? I'm for real, bro. I'm for real, bro. Hey, stop! Fighting!
All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, so much of our blood has been shed over so many centuries. At some point, you would think we would have developed a system to protect ourselves. But over and over, we try love, we try forgiveness, but it never seems to work out for us. We are so trusting that still at this point, if somebody just makes a promise to us, that's good enough. We as a group collectively cape for other people far too much. But when it comes down to our blood being shed, all of a sudden everybody else is lost and don't know what to do. They want to help us and they feel bad, but their hands are tied. Unless, of course, we're doing it to ourselves, then it's what about black on black crime? But when it's the other way around, they will change laws just to make sure you get punished. All of a sudden, their hands aren't tied anymore. And all of that forgiveness, turn the other cheek, forget about the past, all of that is out the window. In New York, there's a 70-year-old brother, Herman Bell. In the 70s, he was a part of the Black Panther Party, and he joined the Black Liberation Army. Now, this brother been locked up almost 45 years. He went to jail back in 1973. Now, recently, Herman Bell was granted parole, and the police association, the police union, and they're trying to do everything they can to stop this brother from being released from prison.
The parole board has lost their damn humanity to think that a murderer should walk their streets.
Patrolmen's Benevolent Association President Patrick Lynch did not mince words, talking about the expected release of cop killer Herman Bell, who could walk free as early as 5 p.m. today. Bell has spent nearly 45 years in prison for the murders of NYPD officers Joseph Piagentini and Waverly Jones. It was 1971, and the two cops had thought they were responding to a real 911 call in Harlem. Instead, they walked into an ambush. Jones was killed with a single shot. Piagentini died in a hail of more than 20 bullets. Bell and two other members of the Black Liberation Army were convicted. But last month, the state parole board granted Bell parole.
This governor is doing nothing but kowtowing down to the lowest common denominator in society, and that's violent criminals.
Governor Cuomo appoints parole board members. He has said he disagrees with their decision in this case, but the board is independent. Piagentini's outraged widow released a statement through the PBA today, also calling out Cuomo, saying he, quote, has time to issue an executive order to give parolees the right to vote, but not to meet with us. Bell supporters, including some members of Officer Jones's family, say Bell is a changed man and deserves to be released. Last month, Bell's attorney read a statement on Jones's son's behalf.
The fact is that Mr. Bell has taken responsibility for his actions. In these times of increased hate, we need more compassion and forgiveness.
The parole board in their ruling said they did not believe that Herman Bell would violate the law. Again, we did reach out to the parole board and the governor's office for their response to the criticism today, but have not yet heard back.
So in 1971, Herman Bell was accused of killing two cops. Now, mind you, two other people were already serving time for this case. They didn't have any eyewitness to put him at the scene, and they didn't have any evidence on him whatsoever. They said he admitted to it, but his first trial ended in a hung jury. But his second trial, he was given 25 to life. So he's been locked up since 1973 for the last close to 45 years. And while he was locked up, he mentored thousands of young brothers. And he had a clean history the whole time. But even then, in his late 60s, the COs were still beating him up. The COs brutally attacked and assaulted him. But as a senior citizen, and there's not much he can do, he's not really a threat. And they even have a program where they parole senior citizens. But for this brother Herman Bell, who was a part of the Black Liberation Army, the police are doing everything in their power to overturn his parole. Now that in itself is abuse of power. And the mayor, Bill de Blasio, who panders for the black vote and has a black wife in the whole nine, he agreed with the police and demanded his parole be overturned.
Herman Bell, notorious for being a cop killer and a member of the Black Liberation Army, will soon become a free man after spending nearly 50 years behind bars for shooting two policemen dead back in 1971. Now, the New York Parole Board's decision even had the support of a son of one of the slain officers.
It seems that individuals with no knowledge of Mr. Bell or the circumstances that led me to support his release many years ago have taken it upon themselves to drum up hate and vengeance.
The Parole Board of New York might have shown sympathy and a willingness to forgive, but not the Policemen's Union, the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association.
They're guilty then, and they're guilty now, and no cop killer should ever walk the face of the earth.
Now, siding with the police is NYC Mayor Bill de Blasio, who called for the decision to be reversed and for Bell to stay behind bars. The parole board received over 367,000 letters urging them not to free Herman Bell, despite his record as a model prisoner. Well, not quite. There were not actually that many individual messages. The association's website gave complainants the option of automatically sending a letter for each of the 62 cop killers listed on the site. That meant that fewer than 6,000 objections to Bell's release generated over 367,000 messages, completely distorting the level of outcry. In fact, according to one poll, 86% of New Yorkers support the parole board's decision. We decided to talk with some former cops about the association's ethics.
I can't comprehend a man who openly admitted to killing 3 cops. I can't comprehend how that person would be allowed to walk the streets. I could picture every cop out there being absolutely outraged to the point of acting on their emotion, especially in today's climate where they are so abused. Your government has turned their back on the police officers. I can absolutely picture not one cop out there not wanting 600,000 plus letters being sent to the parole board requesting this man's parole be denied.
It's manipulation. That's quite obvious. You know, I mean, Herman Bell incident, it's a very tragic incident. He actually killed 3 people, but parole is what it is. You know, we have murderers, rapists, arsonists. People are getting paroled every single day, and they're hell-bent on, if you kill a cop, they want you to just rot in jail until jail is supposed to reform people.
Now, cops like to talk about the perilous situations they put themselves in and the public that they serve in order to do that. But this incident will leave some in New York questioning their integrity.
Now, one of the cops that was killed was a black cop, and his son, Waverly Jones Jr., and other members of his family wrote in support of freeing Herman Bell. They said they forgave him, and they got hate for that. But it's the white cops family that's demanding blood, right along with the police union and the Patrolman Benevolent Association. They want him to rot in prison. They don't care if he's competent or not.
Outraged tonight by the New York City Police Union after the killer of 2 New York cops ambushed in 1971 has been granted parole. Herman Bell, then a member of the Black Liberation Army, now 70 years old. The parole board saying he's been a model inmate who deserved freedom. The 2 murdered cops lured to the Wrangell houses in Upper Manhattan by a bogus 911 call all those years ago. Eyewitness News reporter Tim Fleischer live in Harlem with the story. Tim.
And Bill, this is where those officers were murdered in cold blood. But now, 47 years later, there is, as you point out, outrage because one of their convicted killers is being paroled.
The parole board has chosen to release one of the most dangerous criminals of our time.
Surrounded by a blue wall of NYPD officers, Diane Piagentini and her daughters, Deborah and Mary, are condemning parole board members who are releasing Herman Bell, the convicted killer of their husband and father.
They were assassinated only because they wore the blue uniform. No other reason.
Joseph Piagentini and his partner, Waverly Jones, were ambushed by Bell and 2 other members of the Black Liberation Army. Jones died instantly. Wounded, Piagentini begged for his life.
And this animal took his weapon and pumped 22 rounds into him. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you've ever shot a gun, you know how difficult that is.
Herman Bell and the 2 others were convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life, the most serious penalty in those days. But now police and the victims' families are calling out the 2 parole board members, demanding they be fired.
They've lost the vision of what's right and what's wrong. And this decision is wrong.
Commissioner Otis Cruz and Commissioner Carol Shapiro, they should be fired.
The parole board, considering multiple factors, wrote in part, "Your incarcerated debt has been paid to society, warranting the completion of your sentence on community supervision."
I'm very troubled by it. This was a premeditated killing of a police officer. That should be life in prison, period.
One of the men convicted died in prison. Another one, Anthony Button, he is due to be paroled or scheduled to go before the parole board in June.
Now, the White Cops family and the police spokesman, Pat Lynch, who definitely has the right name, they're claiming the parole board violated policies. I guess now all of a sudden the police union cares about somebody violating policies. And the judge agreed to hear the challenge from a family and from the police union. Now, keep in mind, this has never happened before. Nobody's ever gotten somebody's parole overturned. But they will change the law to make sure you pay. They wasn't talking about, well, we just got to respect the decision. They took action immediately. And they're trying to replace every single person on the parole board. But when it comes to our blood, we have to accept them investigating themselves and beg them to hold themselves accountable. And then we're surprised when they don't. And they justify our murders. These are the same people that always tell you it's better to forgive. Just turn the other cheek. They tell us, well, it's in the past. Forget the past. You have to let it go. But when it comes to them, they don't care if it's 40 years, 100 years. They want you to pay. They want blood, and they won't stop until they get it. Meanwhile, they tell you to turn the other cheek. And this judge agreeing to hear what this family has to say is all about politics. They're trying to play the Blue Lives Matter card. The difference is they get Blue Lives Matter bills passed all the time in Congress. Not that they need it. This brother already did 45 years for killing a cop. And they're still demanding his parole be overturned. Yet when our blood is spilled, it's turn the other cheek. And we happily do it. But they will settle for no less than justice when it's the other way around. If their blood is spilled, somebody has to pay. But when our blood is spilled, we have to protest and cry and beg just to get somebody fired. Not even sent to jail, just fired. They made sure Herman Bell had to pay and everybody else in the Black Panther Party. In the 60s, the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover was determined to stop and destroy black empowerment then. And right now, Judge Sessions with this black identity extremist is doing the same thing. They will not turn the other cheek. They tell everybody it's all about peace and love and we're all one. But America makes sure to keep the biggest and most weapons. And they go out of their way to make sure nobody else has any. At the end of the day, it's going to be us to start punishing people who bring harm to us. We have to make sure people don't harm our children or our elderly. It'll be much harder for a policeman to walk into a neighborhood full of armed people there to protect the community and violate somebody's rights. They're going to think twice. But at some point, we're going to have to realize no matter what we build, they are going to come, and we have to learn to protect ourselves. And all this blaming each other and pointing the fingers and all these tribal differences isn't going to help us solve this problem. We are all we got, but until we can learn how to put aside our differences and our beliefs, then we're going to continue to be in the same situation.
Convicted cop killer will soon be a free man. There's his picture. His name's Herman Bell. Granted parole after serving nearly 45 years behind bars for the murders of not one, but two NYPD officers back in 1971. In a new op-ed, the widow of NYPD officer Joseph Piagentinen writes, the worst thing about it is that it is setting a precedent. New York City police officers and officers all over this country are walking around with a bullseye on their backs. Joining me now is Diane Piagentine. Thank you so much for being with us, Diane.
Thank you.
This happened back in 1971.
Yes.
How did you find out? Did you get a call or a knock on the door?
I got a knock on the door.
Worst day of your life?
Worst day of my life.
You had two little ones at home.
Yes.
How old were your daughters?
15 months and 3 years.
So what did this man rob your girls and rob you of?
Robbed us of our life. My daughters never got to know their father. He wasn't there when they went to high school, father-daughter dances. They never got to know him.
And now you have grandchildren.
And I have grandchildren.
Wow.
And with this decision, it's like, how do I tell my grandchildren when they hear about all this?
Did you ever think this would happen?
No, I never in my wildest dreams did I think that they would be let out of prison for what they did.
Why did you write the op-ed?
Because we need to know. We need to know what happened, what they did. We really need to know what they did. The public needs to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Police officers are there. My husband took that job to protect and to serve, and he served the community of Harlem. He was in the 3-2 precinct.
You wrote in the op-ed, you said the man who killed your husband, he's getting out of jail. You write, what did Joe get? He's not here. My daughters grew up not knowing their father. They were 15 months and 3 years of age when their dad was killed. I have 2 grandchildren. What do I say to them about this? What do I tell them when they get older and they understand how the system let them down? It's not just our lives. They don't have a grandfather. The system let you down. This
Yes.
parole board appointed by the governor?
Yes.
What is the governor saying about this?
Right now, we haven't had any contact with the governor, and we most likely will within the next few days or week. The PBA is trying everything with this decision to have it rescinded, and we'll see how it goes.
What's happening with our country? It seems that criminals have more rights than innocent tax-paying citizens.
And that's a true statement. That is a true statement, because when you look at this happened in '71. It was the first time in the history of the United States that police officers were ever assassinated. Now you look at today. You look at Ramos and Lee. Look what happened to them.
I know.
And look what happened to Officer Familia. And look at what's happening throughout the country, Texas, where they now walk up to a police officer and they kill them.
It's unbelievable. You wrote about that. You said they have targets on their backs now.
Yes, they do.
What do you say to the police officers that are watching, the men and women in blue, who risk their lives every day to stand up for individuals like this guy?
Right. To continue doing their jobs, to continue protecting and serving, but be aware, be careful. If you're in a patrol car and you're sitting, you know, on a street somewhere, make sure that you're aware that somebody can't come up behind you and shoot you.
It's sad that you even have to give that advice today. You said one of the hardest things that you had to go through was telling your 3-year-old, Daddy is not coming home. I can't imagine what that day was like. What do you want to say to the families that are also in your same position or that have their loved ones on the streets every day?
Every time a police officer's family loses their husband and their father, it affects me. I know what they're going to go through. I know how they're going to feel when he's not coming home. We used to sit on the stoop and wait for him. So, you know, I know all about that.
What's your message to the man who killed your husband?
I really, at this point, don't have a message. I really don't. My message is this. I would like everybody that is outraged by what has happened to write letters to the governor and to write letters to the 2 commissioners.
Can this be reversed?
We're working on it. Pat Lynch and the PBA is working on that, and we'll see what happens. But from the general public, they need to write to the governor. They need to show that they are outraged with this decision, and also to the 2 commissioners, Otis Cruz and Carol Shapiro. They need to be written to.
The mayor said he is troubled by this, and the NYP commissioner sent out a statement and said releasing him from prison is indefensible.
Yes.
So they're on your side.
Yes, and it is. This decision is indefensible. We can't defend what they did. It should never, never have happened. When you kill a police officer, you don't get let out of jail. You're in there for life.
How you doing? You got a driver's license? Where's that? Where's your driver's license? Back up. You don't see the issue here? Hold on.
Don't touch me.
You don't see the issue here. You're not parked across 3 lanes?
That's cool. That's cool. You good?
Yeah,
you get back in the car.
cool. 2390. Can I get another squad here? Back up. Back up.
For what?
Are you obstructing me? I just told you to back up. I just told you to back up.
I just did.
Everything is on camera, okay?
You touched me first, so...
That's right, I told you to back up. Because you're going to try and get in the car. I'll do what I want, all right?
No,
I own this right here.
You don't own me, though.
So what's your name?
You say it on
I didn't say I own you. I said I own this.
But this is me. Don't touch me, though. You don't own me.
What's your name?
So don't touch me.
What's your name?
It's on there. Sterling Brown.
I'm asking you.
I'm telling you, Sterling Brown.
These are simple questions, man.
No, I'm answering.
These are simple questions, and you're being all badass to me, all right? I asked you a question so I could verify this, okay? You don't think I see these that are whatever?
I don't know.
Fake?
I mean,
so I'm asking you your name.
I use real IDs. I don't.
Okay, I don't know who you are. Okay, so that's why I asked.
Okay.
I asked for an ID. These are legitimate questions, right?
I ain't got no problem with it.
Okay, well, you look at me like I got something growing out of my head, all right?
I'm just saying, you touched me. That's the issue. That's
right, because you got up in my face, okay?
I got up in your face?
Right.
Really?
I asked you to back up, and you did not do it. I asked you to back up, and you did not do it. You backed up about 3 inches. All right? Everything I'm doing is on camera, dude.
I don't care.
These are legitimate requests, all right? So, can you explain this to me?
I mean,
parked across 2. You have an entirely empty parking lot, and you parked across 2 handicap parking. Okay. Going to the Walgreens.
In and out.
At what time?
In and out.
Oh, long enough time where I sat here for about a minute and came out.
I was in and out. That's it. I did. I pulled up, parked right here. I was in and out. That's it. what we doing? Like, what's the...
Oh, we're gonna wait.
On what?
I'm waiting for my partner.
I understand that, but...
Well, you had time to park across these lanes here, so we're gonna wait a little longer.
Do what?
We're just gonna figure it out, man.
I know. All right. So what we figuring out?
We're gonna figure out what we're gonna do. Whether you're gonna get tickets, whatever.
You can't do that by yourself.
Take your hands out of your pockets now!
I got stuff in my hands. On the ground! No, I didn't even get a chance.
But you at the time didn't really have a reason.
Right. I just did, initially, like I say, I rolled up, I was going to take a piss. I see the car parked like that. He's gone. I said, is there a reason for this? The emergency? Whatnot, you know. That's what I'm thinking. Hey, maybe he's got a medical emergency or something. He needs to get in there. And I asked her, I said, where is he? I was inside of just a minute. He comes out and starts getting in my face. And I said, hey, back up. You wouldn't do it. You know, same thing as before. And that's why I called for somebody else. If the guy hadn't been such a dick, it would have just been, hey, have a nice day, you know. But then I thought, okay, he's being an ass. He's trying to hide something. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't have all the answers.
You initiated everything.
No, you initiated everything. You initiated everything. Yeah, I did.
This is, of course, a story that has been closely watched and followed over the past few years, kneeling during the national anthem. The NFL has adopted this new policy when it comes to that controversial move, rules that are leading to a brand new firestorm this morning. And just a few moments ago, President Trump weighing in with some comments sure to cause even more controversy, saying that maybe players who stay in the locker room during the anthem should not be in the country. This morning, President Trump speaking out about the NFL anthem controversy.
I don't think people should be staying in locker rooms, but still, I think it's good. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem. Well, you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem. And the NFL owners did the right thing if that's what they've done.
The president's comments coming just after NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell announced a change to the league's policy on kneeling during the national anthem.
Our objective as a league and to all 32 clubs, which was unanimous, is that we want people to be respectful of the national anthem. We want people to stand. That's all personnel.
Since 2016, dozens of NFL players led by Colin Kaepernick, then quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, kneeling during the national anthem as a form of protest against racism and social injustice. Among the key changes to the NFL's new policy, personnel who choose not to stand can stay off the field until after the anthem has been performed. But if anyone on the field chooses not to stand, the NFL will fine the team.
This will be viewed as a clampdown. This will be viewed as the NFL attempting to gag players to prevent them from raising issues of police violence or racial inequity during this anthem space.
The NFL Players Association criticized the decision, saying they were not consulted about the new policy, adding that they will challenge any aspect of it that is inconsistent with the collective bargaining agreement. Malcolm Jenkins, safety for the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, tweeting, "While I disagree with the decision, I will not let it silence me or stop me from fighting." Not all team leadership is on board either. New York Jets chairman and CEO Christopher Johnson says he'll pay any fines for his players, telling Newsday, "If somebody takes a knee, that fine will be borne by the organization, by me, not the players."
Obviously, a lot of strong opinions on both sides of this issue, but there are a lot of other professional athletes in other sports.
Yeah.
What are the rules there?
So in the NHL and Major League Baseball, they actually don't have any rules that govern what players have to do during the anthem. In the NBA, though, you could say that it takes it even a step further. I mean, the policy is that players actually have to stand in a dignified posture during the national anthem. Nonetheless, though, the NBA, those players have managed to develop a bit of a reputation for being even more socially aware than a lot of their professional counterparts. I mean, these are some shoes that some of the players have been wearing as a nod to the Black Lives Matter movement. We, of course, back in 2012, we saw a number of the Miami Heat standing in hoodies in the wake of the Trayvon Martin debacle. So but here's the thing. This isn't over. I mean, I think the league probably thought yesterday that this would be a decision that put it to rest. I talked to a former NFL player yesterday who has said that players are already talking about other ways in which they can protest. So we'll be talking about this for some time.
As many of you know, NASCAR grew from the back roads of America's South and the bright shores of Daytona Beach, incredible place, to become one of the world's premier and most beloved sports. I love it. People love that sport. Built by names like Allison, Earnhardt, Petty, Pearson, Waltrip, this lively sport reflects our national spirit and our can-do attitude. At every NASCAR race, you will see thousands of patriotic Americans from the grandstands to the pit stalls proudly waving our flag and roaring with joy at the words, "Start your engines." And I will tell you one thing I know about NASCAR. They do indeed, Brian, stand for the playing of the national anthem, right? They do indeed. Somebody said, maybe you shouldn't say that. That'll be controversial. I said, that's okay. NASCAR's not going to mind it at all, right, fellas? They don't mind it at all.
All right, Stevie, you did a little instant composition for the Soul Train Gang and myself, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's hear it.
Put your hands together, clap soft. Train went down Cornelius. Soul train went down Cornelius. And let me hear everybody say, where all the brothers and sisters get together. Say it, where all the brothers and sisters get together. Say it loud. Well, all the brothers and sisters get together. Stop right here. I'm telling you, people, for your information. Soul train down Police. See the finest women's Soul Train dance. Everybody say it loud. Well, all the brothers and sisters get together. Say it louder. Yeah, 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 yeah. Can you hear me talking, baby? Yeah, 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 yeah. Don't you be very superstitious. On your mind, yeah, yeah, yeah. Clap a little louder, people.
All right, and we back on the forecast. And I want to say RIP to the brother Donald Ivy. Of course, they can violate our rights. And when it's our blood being shed, then there's nothing they can do. But if it's the other way around, they will create laws to make sure you get punished. And as much as they tell us to turn the other cheek, they'll never do that themselves. They live by the saying, give me liberty or give me death. And we already see enough death, so we might as well take our liberty. You can't change the system from within the system. You have to destroy the system and replace it. Or at least build your own systems to protect yourselves. But you got to understand, when you build your own systems, they are going to come to destroy it. To them, our empowerment means they're disenfranchised. That's why when we talk about loving ourselves, they take it as us hating them. They call us racist if we talk about building our own economy. But the difference is, it's not out of hate like Jim Crow was. We'll still take your dollars. They didn't take our dollars because they hated us so much. But at the end of the day, until we put aside our tribal differences, we're never going to build anything. And whatever we manage to build, we have to learn how to protect it and how to protect ourselves and how to protect our children. So as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.